Welcome, welcome. We're at the beautiful Startwell in Toronto, and today we're going to talk about a really important and fun topic, which is product market fit. Before we get started, what is MCA? MCA is a company I work at. I've been working there for 3 years. Our goal is to become the top management consulting firm in the Web3 space. We want to be like the Bain, McKinsey, BCG, but for crypto. We've been helping companies over the last 3 years with launches and pretty much any big problems that they have. We've helped launch over 70 projects. And I'm excited today to share some of our expertise and knowledge around product market fit. Before we get started, who am I? My name's Hash. I'm the COO of Multi-Chain Advisors. I have 5 years of accounting finance experience. I worked at KPMG, Kimberly-Clark, CIBC, all these Canadian companies. And I also led an external reporting division at CloudMD, which is a health public startup in Toronto before joining Multi-Chain 3 years ago. Since 3 years, I've been working with Multi-Chain to help over 70 clients. We've helped raise over $100 million in the last 3 years, and we've had over 10 million in social growth for our clients. Some notable projects that we've helped with are Pip Network, Wormhole, Zeus Network, and a couple other ones like Gaming, Helio, and a bunch of others. So what are we talking about today? Obviously, the topic's about product market fit. First, we're going to talk about why it's important and what it is. Common pitfalls that people who are running startups go through when it comes to product market fit, the product market fit cycle, discussions on different examples related to product market fit, and what happens after you have product market fit. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of time afterwards for AMAs so you guys can pick my brain and ask me questions. So what the heck is product market fit? It's essentially when a product satisfies market demand. That is when you have product market fit. So when you develop something that's good, that the market needs, and they both kind of come together and handshake, you have product market fit. Why is this hard? Well, good product market fit is very saturated typically. If a product has, like a DEX, for example, has good product market fit, then a lot of people compete for that mind share, right? Whatever the market demands typically has a lot of focus and energy put towards it because there's a lot of opportunities there. With market demands always ever changing in crypto, this becomes a lot harder for people developing technology too, right? Let's say you spend a couple months building something super hot that was a trend when in crypto, and a couple months later the trend switches, and you spend all this time developing something that no longer has a fit with the market. You have big issues there. Tech takes time to build, right? And so when you spend a lot of time building something that you think is necessary, and you've sank in a lot of resources and a lot of cost towards developing something, and it doesn't have product market fit, it results in a lot of heartache. And teams also lack a lot of experience and knowledge when it comes to figuring out whether a product has product market fit. And so a lot of people kind of build projects out of passion or build projects that they believe are necessary without necessarily getting the feedback that they need. And due to the lack of experience and knowledge that they have in the markets, they end up wasting a lot of time trying to build something necessary. And finally, it's really hard to pivot, right? After spending months, potentially years building something, if someone tells you, hey, your product is no longer necessary, that's probably not going to be the easiest thing to swallow. And it's going to be just as hard for you to pick everything up back again and start anew. So what are the traps of isolated building, and what does this mean? So this is a common pitfall that happens with product market fit, right? You're a talented developer, you're a talented founder, you think, hey, I'm building something that's going to be useful, or let me find this problem that exists and build something because I think it's going to be something that people need, right? There's a lot of assumptions that get made, right? Maybe your mom's like, hey, your product's great, and you're motivated to build something, but maybe your mom's not the market that you're trying to sell your product to, right? A lot of people look at other projects in this space and they're like, hey, if XYZ project can do this, what's stopping me from doing it? But that doesn't mean that just because it works for someone else, it's going to work for you, right? You need to do the research and you need to do the due diligence that a lot of people skip. And a lot of people think that it's all about the time that you spend, right? If I spend all this time developing something, if I spend all this time tackling an issue that I'm passionate about, it's going to be something that people care about. Maybe you care about it, but other people might not. So how do you tackle this? Well, The biggest thing is getting feedback. So where do you get feedback? Obviously, you want to be able to go to, you know, places like Super Team Canada and the super teams all around the world, where you can go to, trusted friends and trusted members of the community and bounce ideas off them, right? Obviously, you don't want to talk about, your proprietary technology or some sort of like key idea that you've thought about that's super innovative that you scared someone's going to steal from you, right? So that's why you want to go to trusted parties like your friends that you build in the space to bounce ideas off of, and you can trust that they're not going to steal your idea, right? You want to be able to go on Twitter and join Twitter Spaces and get direct information from live audiences. One good thing is Twitter Spaces, right? There's Twitter Spaces hosted almost any time of the day, all around the world. At Multichain, we've been hosting the Twitter Spaces for the last 3 years. We have almost 137 episodes that we host every Wednesdays from 11 to 2. If you're a founder or you're some sort of developer and you want to understand, is the market going to react to the thing that I'm developing, or what does the market even care about? You can hop on these free Twitter spaces and just listen in and see what people are talking about. What's the hottest thing? What's on people's mind? And so Twitter Space is a great resource for you to get feedback and understand the market. One thing that's been pretty recent, that's been getting a lot of steam, is applications like Cato and Cookie.fun. What are these? These are pretty much like analytic websites that allow you to understand what Mindshare is. Mindshare is essentially what people are talking about in the crypto space, and they aggregate it in a way where you can easily understand what's hot and what isn't, right? So for you to kind of look at these Mindshare website on a regular basis to understand trends, to understand what people care about and what's kind of top of mind in everyone's vision, is going to allow you to understand whether what you're building is something that people care about, or at least give you a little bit of direction. And obviously, there's general research, right? Guys, if you're building something, please take time to do due diligence and go through a proper research, effort, right? Is the target that I'm, looking for interested in what I'm building? Are people in crypto going to like what I'm building? Is there specific trends and examples that I can use based on historical information that's going to give me direction as to whether my product's going to have product market fit? So without the legwork of actually doing good research, how the heck are you going to know if your product is good? And last but not least, you can also talk to external parties. So we at Multichain Advisors work with founders and companies all the time, and people typically hire us because we're an external party and we're not biased, right? So we're willing to say what needs to be said. If we think your product market fit is shit, we're going to tell you that, right? And your team probably won't tell you that because they're all working on the same product. But that's why you need these external companies and external parties to give you the honest feedback that's going to level you up. So what is the product market fit cycle? On the left over here, I have like a traditional map that they kind of show in business universities and stuff, right? You identify growth opportunities, you understand customer needs, you define product value, you build the value, and then you adapt and iterate. And you kind of go in this cycle. I've kind of simplified this into 5 steps. First, you research, then you develop. You don't fully develop everything, you develop components of it. Then you get feedback, you assess the feedback, because hey, if you have a hater and they're just like, hey, your product is shit, it doesn't mean you got to scrap your product. Maybe you just got to get more feedback, right? The more feedback you get, the more leveled the feedback that you have, the more you can assess that feedback for its value. And as you assess it, you're able to make the right adjustments, go back to doing research, and going back into developing what needs to be developed. So this is just a simple cycle. Highly recommend that if you're a developer or founder, heads down building, you take some time to get the right feedback and you go through some iterations and adjustments. And it's much easier for you to do these adjustments when you're building components than to do these adjustments after you've built your whole product, right? Because that's just going to cost you a ton of time, and developers are not cheap, to say the least. So let's look at traditional market examples. I stole these from Pip, the Pip DAS presentation. They are a client, so all good. I really like this, but essentially 2 really good product market fits is like Netflix and Uber, right? What does Netflix do? It allows you to watch any movie, any place, anytime, right? Before, I don't know, I'm not trying to age myself, but those blockbusters and all these, physical brick and mortar shops where you'd have to go through and buy DVDs. Those no longer exist for a specific reason, right? People wanted convenience, they got it, right? Taxis were booming less than like 10 years ago. Uber came through, they gave you any ride at any place at any time. So let's look at some Web3 examples. This is Pit, straight from their DAS presentation. What is Pit trying to do? They're trying to provide you any price at any place at any time. So what does this mean from a product market fit standpoint? Okay, so why does prices even matter? First of all, market price data has an increase in value over 100% in the last 5 years. That's almost $8 billion in the traditional market. 6 Web2 businesses, including Bloomberg and a couple other guys, pretty much own the market data market of $34 trillion, right? So there's obviously a market demand because it's such a massive market. And the fact that it's grown over the last 5 years shows that there's actual empirical evidence that there is a market here and there's a lot of money to be made, right? So Pit is able to, at the current moment, offer 1,200 price feeds. Their goal in the short term is to expand to 5,700 symbols. And from there, there's millions of symbols across the world that if they're able to provide that market data, they'll be able to compete with these traditional Web2 businesses that literally have a monopoly on a $34 trillion market. That, my friends, is product market fit. So when you're looking at Pit and you understand that they're providing decentralized prices that fix this traditional market monopoly issue, and if they're able to succeed in providing these market prices and market data to these Web2 businesses that need this data, they're able to, tackle a massive opportunity, right? And another thing that they mentioned that I really loved is AI agents and how decentralized price feeds and decentralized market data will allow these AI agents to develop and access information much more easily, right? If these 6 Web2 businesses own this massive market and you're just a Web2 or Web3 developer building an AI agent platform that leverages market data, you're going to get screwed because they're going to charge you thousands and thousands of dollars in prices, right? So, Pit comes in, offers decentralized data. They tackle this market, a massive market, and you're able to see a good example of product market fit. What's another example? This is another client of ours. They're called Momentum. They've been around for 21 days. In 21 days, they've been able to achieve 620 million in volume and over 30 million in TVL. These guys are one of the fastest growing SUI DEXs. And I'm going to talk about why there's a product market fit with them. So first of all, DEXs themselves are just phenomenal product market fit tools, right? It's just like trading bots. DEXs is there's coins that are going to be traded and you don't want to trade them on a centralized exchange. You're going to use a DEX. And DEXs make money on all the swap fees. It just makes sense, right? It's a protocol that makes money the second it launches. In this kind of domain, obviously there's going to be a lot of competition, right? Because if anyone could just start up a DEX and they immediately start making money, why wouldn't they? In this competitive field, you have to focus on the components in which you can provide unique advantages. So what did Momentum do? Momentum understood that there's 4 points that a DEX competes on. They're either competing on trading fees, they're competing on LP APYs, which is influenced by bribes and incentives. They're competing on deep liquidity. Why does deep liquidity matter? Well, if pools have deep liquidity and you're a trader who has a lot of money, I'm not saying me, I'm just saying any whale, and you're moving millions of dollars, your slippage is going to be reduced the deeper the liquidity pool. That might save you thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're a massive market maker or a high frequency trader, right? So these guys are going to start using this DEX with deep liquidity because they're going to be able to save money. That just makes sense. And another component of having high TVL is security. I'm sure you guys know in crypto, there's always massive exploits. We literally had like an exploit last month with Bybit, right? So when there's more TVL, which is total value locked, they become targets for these hackers to come and exploit, right? And try to steal that money. The cool thing that Momentum did to kind of establish itself as good decks and to establish its product market fit is the fact that its traditional business was MSafe. So MSafe was their traditional business. They're a multi-sig platform for the Move ecosystem, and currently, right now, they have 700 million in TVL. So if they're able to leverage the fact that their existing product already has 700 million TVL, that's going to convince LPs and other players in the DEX ecosystem to now use their DEX and insert their money into their DEX because they can at least have the reassurance that this company is not just some new company that doesn't know what they're doing, but it's a company that's been able to secure a lot of money previously. Another thing that allowed them to kind of build a good product market fit is they were able to leverage their relationships to rapidly grow. So the founder of Momentum was the first female engineer of the Libra Meta project, which, as you guys know, Sui, Aptos, and any of the Move kind of L1s actually came from Libra when they kind of got stopped. So leveraging her relationships, she was able to, get better incentives and kind of establish key relationships and partnerships that allowed them to kind of penetrate into the market. So last but not least, another thing that they leveraged for product market fit was the fact that they're introducing a new DEX model. So they're introducing something called the V33 model, which was, I guess, popularized by the Aerodrome DEX on base. And the V33 model is essentially a new kind of flywheel system that reallocates LP fees, DEX fees into token stakers instead of LPs. So the traditional DEX model of Uniswap reallocates fees directly to LPs, which, as you can imagine, doesn't really allow for price appreciation for tokens. The V33 model, on a super high level, reallocates 100% of the DEX fees to token stakers. And then these tokens are for like locked stakers, not just like for holding the token or whatever. And then LPs, instead of getting fees, they get tokens emitted, right? So it's kind of a flywheel. There's more stuff to it. Highly suggest you spend some time to look into the model. It's definitely something interesting. But for them to be the first V33 DEX of Sui is what allowed them to kind of penetrate into a highly saturated market. And their aim is to offer 6 times less trading fees than any of the current DEXs on Sui. So now that you've seen some examples of what product market fit is and some traditional businesses that have that and Web3 businesses that have that, what do you do after you get product market fit? It doesn't stop there, right? It just because you have a product and it meets the market demand doesn't mean your job's done. You need to market. You need to be loud. You need to gather key supporters and investments, right? Because that's what's going to allow you to continue to grow your business. You're going to have to get users and results, build good case studies, create beautiful dashboards that showcase your growth. And you're going to also have to explore your moat. Just because the better product market fit that you have, the more competition you're going to attract. So when you find that you have a really good product that meets market demand, you need to be able to build very strong moats, right? You need to be able to, figure out whether it's a customer loyalty strategy, figure out whether it's, getting your key whales and making sure that they feel supported and feel motivated to stay in your project, or figuring out different incentives and systems to keep people, locked in for your long-term vision. That's what's going to allow you to compete against new competitors that are trying to take your product market fit. And last but not least, it's always good to build a loyal community. Cool. So how does multi-chain help with all of this stuff? We focus on the Web3 capital markets. We help with capital raise. We do media tours and Twitter spaces. We help with go-to-market and growth. We've done a couple mergers and acquisitions in this space. We're really well connected with BD, with partnerships and VCs. So if you guys are doing a raise, we'll be happy to help. And we also focus on marketing and branding. If you are an early stage startup and you need some support, the multi-chain team is more than happy to jump on a free consultation and to give you guys that kind of first nudge and support towards success. Cool. So now, as I mentioned before, a large part of this presentation is actually based on the AMA. So I hope you guys have some questions or so I can help you guys out. Any questions? Damn. So everyone here's got product market fit, eh? Yeah. Cool. That's a good question. So for the folks watching live, the question is, what is the common pitfall that a lot of like, I guess, early stage startups and founders kind of fall into when it comes to product market fit? I mentioned a little bit. It's definitely isolated building, right? And it's also like being very narrow minded with the solution that you're trying to build, right? A lot of people are really passionate in the space, and that's phenomenal, right? We want to encourage passionate builders to come in this space and build something that they actually care about. But just because you're building something that you care about doesn't mean it's going to make money, and it doesn't mean that people are going to, investors and VCs are going to invest in your vision and your product, right? So while it's important for you to build on passion, it's just as important for you to get real honest feedback as early as possible and from trusted parties, right? Because the last thing you want to do is spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in development costs, hiring a bunch of devs, building this beautiful solution that no one needs and no one cares about. So, my biggest advice to early stage startups and founders is to be open minded, is to not be narrow when it comes to the problems that you're trying to solve. It's to leverage a lot of research and due diligence and get some honest feedback, even though it's going to be painful. Yeah. Any other questions? Ooh, I'm pretty ruthless. I kind of have to be. So his question was, what is some painful feedback that you've delivered? Uh, over the span of the last 3 years, I've probably been in over a dozen conversations where I've had to tell founders that what they're building isn't it, and there needs to be a lot of modifications. There has been situations where we've kind of totally had to scrap months of work. There's one particular one that hurts myself because it's something that Multichain actually worked on for a couple months with a fairly large protocol in the Solana ecosystem that I will not name because of NDAs. But there was a project that was worked on for 6 months that would have resulted in a potential multi-billion-dollar airdrop that was scrapped due to it not having the right fit with the founders. And what happened there was a mix of things, miscommunications with what the founders and kind of executive team was trying to do versus some of the people who are in the operations role, right? And so the larger an organization is, the more disconnected the vision is, right? And especially after like a TGE or right before TGE, the larger the company is, the more people there are, thinking about different ideas and exploring different routes. And sometimes you receive hard feedback, and sometimes you have to give hard feedback too, right? So after 6 months of working on a project, we came into the agreement mutually, though painful, to scrap a project that was developed for over 6 months. Cool. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Mm. That's a great question. So the question was, if you are focused on a single domain, how do you make it so that you don't focus on too many new areas and lose, or when is the time to actually expand to different verticals? So one thing I've noticed, especially with fast tech and kind of like a fast moving and adapting ecosystems, is a lot of founders have like shiny object syndrome, where they're just kind of like easily distracted, right? There's a lot of ADHD in this space. For anyone who's trade meme coins, and maybe it's just the nature of the space itself. The dopamine levels are very high, and results in a lot of like squirrel brain kind of situations. It's really important. Like that's a big risk, right? Um, if you're able to establish mastery and control of a single domain, there is a lot of risk in expanding in different areas, because when effort is put towards different tasks and different things, especially if it's completely unrelated to the traditional, like the core product that you have, you're going to be spending a lot of resources and attention trying to build something else, while your existing competitors or new market entries might come and compete with your existing products. So my suggestion always is to focus on what's making you money and what's gotten you the success in the first place. I'm assuming this is more for like a more successful, like later stage business, right? If you're an early stage startup, don't focus on test things, but when you realize what you're actually focusing on and what you're building on, go fully in that. Because if you go like half in, someone else in the space who's seen that same product market fit is going to be putting 100% effort when you're putting 70% effort, and you're going to lose on that front, and the other fronts that you have 30% effort in, right? So you want to be able to test different things, but you don't want to go too deep. But when you decide to go deep, you have to fully commit. And when you fully commit and you have control, even then you have to maintain resources on your primary objective before you start exploring secondary objectives. Because then you lose everything, right? And we've seen that in the space multiple times, right? Yeah, I mean, OpenSea is a good example of that, right? Or any of the massive traditional Web3 businesses that have kind of collapsed. Oh, another token launchpad? Oh, it's never enough, It's yeah, it is what it is. I mean, a good example of locking in on one, like one specific vertical is like Pump.Fun, right? I mean, like they just locked in and they cashed out like $500 million, right? They weren't focusing on 50 different verticals. They saw product market fit, they gained leadership on product market fit, and they just went fully in. Any other questions?
I have a question. So for the hackathon, where you have very limited time, they
Mhm.
only have until May 16th
Yeah.
to finish building and creating their pitch. With such limited time and rapid iteration, what are some maybe one or two very small actionable steps outside of what you've already suggested that the teams can take to accelerate that movement toward product market fit, or to demonstrate more to the judges that it is there?
Yeah, so the question was for hackathon projects that have to create, their final product by May 13th or 16th. They obviously have a limited amount of time, right? So how do they figure out their product market fit in such a limited span of time, I guess? I guess two things for that. One thing is leverage your mentors, please. There's a reason you have mentors. There's a reason these people are selected to be mentors, right? You want to be able to leverage people who have a lot of experience, who have a lot of knowledge in the ecosystem, to be able to tell you or shoot your idea down immediately, or tell you to pivot on areas that you might not be able to fully kind of grasp, right? So getting the guidance is one thing for sure, right? And leveraging the resources you have. Another thing is doing the research and due diligence upfront, right? So spend, I mean, well, May 16th, what is it today? 30, is it already May?
No, it's April
25th. Oh man, it's crazy. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, like they got like 21 days or 20 days or whatever, right? So spend like 3, 4 days going like super all in on research, right? And do like, brainstorming sessions, get your whole team, right? Hackathons are not done alone, right? They're done with teams. Yeah. All right. Get your team together and go to a coffee shop, or go, come to the super team, event, workspace and sit with your team and actually spend like 5, 6, 7 hours brainstorming, right? Take some breaks, relax a little bit, and then go back into it. If you spend a lot of time up front thinking through things and communicating on what you guys want to tackle and coming to a proper agreement, you want to be able to at least select a couple options, right? You don't want to just be like, okay, we spent 3 days researching, and this is the only one project that we're going to do, and this is the only thing, right? Because then if your mentor comes through and shoots it down, you got to go and do that again, right? So choose like 3 or 4 different verticals. You obviously have like different categories that you're working in, right? Is it done in silos? Cool. So then at the very least, you're like limited by your area of focus. So inside of the area of focus, select like 2 to 3, maybe 5 options done through tons of actual upfront due diligence, and then go to your mentors and be like, these are the 5 options. These are the things that I've thought about. These are some of the pros and cons for each one. What do you think? Right? And then maybe you don't just go to one mentor, maybe you go to a couple of them, right? Maybe you go to 3 mentors and they're going to tell you, I like option 1 better than option 2. And maybe mentor 2 is like, I like option 3 instead of option 1. And then you kind of aggregate that information. And then you yourselves will be the ones making the executive decision as to which option you go with. Because if you don't like what you're building, or if you're not passionate about what you're building, you're probably not going to do a good job presenting it. Cool. Anything else? Simon? I don't know. I'd probably be doing accounting, to be honest. Right. I mean, that's my background, right? So, but yeah, no, I would have not enjoyed it. To be honest, I don't know. No. Would be here. I've been in this ship for too long now, so I'm in crypto, right? It's been 8 years. I can't tell you the amount of like ups and downs we've gone through. But there is something about the space that kind of hooks it in, right? There are things like this and nice events around the world and friendships that you get to make in crypto. And the fact that we're in such a rapidly moving, fast-paced tech environment is exciting to me. So traditional accounting has shit all on Web3.
So as the CEO of what do you think is the biggest lesson for internal when you're managing your team with
Two things. One is being, so the question was as a COO of do they hear it or no? Okay. So the question was as a COO of multi-chain, what are some lessons that you've learned, right? More or less. Cool. So 2 things. One, you have to be extremely resourceful and adaptive in this space, right? So you want to be able to leverage your networking connections because that's ultimately what gives you a moat to some extent, right? The friendships that you have, the relationships that you have, the people that you're going around the world to meet at these events. Every single one of these people is a unique individual that has their own experience and own stories. And the accumulation of all that is what allows you to build rapidly in this space, right? Because you're able to like learn so much from all these talented builders and individuals. That's allowed me as an individual to grow a lot, but it's also allowed me as like a team leader or whatever to be able to implement different ideas and different suggestions and improvements that I've learned from other people, older people, more successful people, into becoming a better leader and a better individual. And the second thing is patience, right? Crypto is crazy, right? It's so rapidly moving, and one day it's this, and the next day it's this. And when you're working with a lot of startups, obviously they're all stressed, right? Everyone wants to succeed. No one comes to us that has no problems, right? We only deal with people who have problems, right? So when we're dealing with people with problems, you need to be able to be patient, right? You need to be able to figure out what is the core issue that you're trying to solve. You need to be able to like cut through the stress and cut through the bullshit and cut through the noise, right? Yeah, there can be issues tomorrow, and there could be issues the day after, and there could be another FTX. Hopefully not, but you just got to be ready for whatever, right? And if you're someone who's not grounded, and you're someone who's shaky, as a leader, as an individual in this ecosystem, you're not going to make it. Right? You need to be very grounded. You need to be very emotionally stable. And you need to be someone who understands that, yeah, shit could be bad now, but it will get better eventually. Right? We were here at a time when Solana was at $8 and people said it was going to 2. So, you know, long way since then. So you build a lot of resilience, and that comes with a lot of patience.